There's one squidding rig that's outperformed all others. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to set it up. Let's dive in. So for this rig, you just want to grab your leader using a 15 to 20 pound leader. So if you snag, you got a better chance of getting your jigs back, especially because you can run multiple jigs on this rig. So you just tie your sinker on. Sinker size will depend on your rod's cast weight. So you got to make sure you factor in the weight of the sinker plus the weight of all the jigs that you're going to be attaching to the line, and make sure your rod's maximum cast weight can handle that total weight. Now, I'm tying it on using a union knot, but you guys just use whichever knot you're most comfortable with. The strongest knot is the knot you tie best, but just make sure you remember to lubricate your line as well as the knot before you tighten that knot, to make sure we don't singe our line, which will weaken it pretty severely. Now, we just cut the tag off, like so. Okay. So now that we've got our sinker on, you want to leave a gap depending how far you want your jig to sit off the bottom, and then you want to fold your line. Then you want to fold your line. Now, the longer this section is, once you fold your line, the further your jig's actually going to be away from your main line. So if you want your jig really close to your main line, when you fold it, just make sure that your line is shorter. Whereas if you want your jig to be much further away from your main line, then you just make it longer before you move on to the next step. So I don't like them to be too far away from the main line, so I'm going to make it roughly 10 to 12 centimeters long, which is about 4 to 5 inches. And then you just want to create a loop like this, pinch it with one hand, and then you want to feed this tag through that loop 4 times. So feed that through 4 times, and then you want to grab the tag and you want to slowly tension your line to form that knot a little bit. But before you pull it tight, you want to make sure that you lubricate it really well so that we don't singe it, and then that will weaken it. So now we can pull it nice and tight like so. So that gives us a dropper loop. Now, for our jigs to sit nicely in the water, we want to turn this into a T-knot. Now, to do that, you want to grab the line with either hand, create a loop like this, and then you want to pinch the line with your fingers and then wrap it around each other 6 times like so. Then through this gap, you want to pass the dropper loop through the gap we just created, making sure that the knot also comes through. And then you want to slowly pull on either side of the line to start forming the knot. But before you tighten it, you want to double check and make sure that the knot actually came through that gap in the middle like this. Then you want to lubricate your line really well. It's really important that we lubricate our lines really well, and then you can pull it tight, and that creates a T-shaped knot, which does really well at keeping your jig away from your main line. So to put your jig on, all you would do is just pinch the end of the line and then feed it through the nose of your squid jig, go around the jig, and then pull it tight. So now in the water, you would have your sinker on the bottom and your squid jig off to the side. And because we're using a T-knot, it's less likely for your jig to wrap around your actual main line. It keeps a little bit more distance between your actual jig and your main line because you've got that T-knot rather than just a standard dropper loop. Now, you can just use it with a single jig like this, but I like to add a second jig. So you want to leave some space, and you want to make sure that before you tie your second dropper, you want to make sure that when you've got both jigs on, they can't reach each other. So once you're happy with the distance between your jigs, same thing, you fold your line in half, create a loop like so, and then you want to feed the tag through that loop 4 times. That's 3, 4. Then you want to slowly tension it to form the knot, and then you want to lubricate it really well before we set the knot. and then we pull it nice and tight. Again, that gives us a dropper loop, which we then want to turn into a T-knot. So grab the line from both sides, create a loop, hold your line in place with your fingers, and then wrap the line around each other 6 times in total, like so. And then you want to feed the T-knot through that gap, and then slowly start to tension your line. Then you want to lubricate our line, and then make sure that that dropper loop, the knot on that dropper loop, has passed through that gap in the middle before we pull it tight, like so. Now we can pull it nice and tight. There we go. And that gives us our second T-knot. So now if we were to put on our second jig, like so, you'll notice the jigs are far enough apart so that they can't reach each other. See? So the jigs are far enough apart so that they can't reach each other. If your jigs are too close to each other in the water, they can get stuck to each other, and then you end up not really catching much. So just a quick recap, you'd have your sinker on the bottom up to your first T-knot with your first squid jig, a big enough gap between that jig and your next jig so that they don't tangle with each other in the water, and then about 1 meter worth of leader, and you just FG or double uni this to your main line. If you don't know how to do an FG or double uni, you can just use a swivel if that makes it easier for you. Now, one of the best things about this rig, if you want to change colors, all you would have to do is just push the line back through the nose and then just pull the jig off. It's as simple as that. And then all you would do is pinch the front, pass that through the next color you want to change to, go around the jig and pull it tight again. So it really makes cycling through colors so much easier. You don't have to worry about cutting and retying different colors on. You just push the line through the nose of the jig, that loosens up the loop, you just pull it around and off the jig comes. And for the next color, you just pinch the loop, feed it back through the nose of your new jig, pull your line around the whole jig. Make sure it doesn't get caught behind the sinker. You want it to actually go all the way around, and then you want to pull it tight around the nose of the jig. Now, another advantage for this rig, aside from making it really easy to change colors, is you can use it on any size jig as well. So if you're targeting green eye instead of arrows, for example, so southern calamari, and you're going to use a 2.5 or bigger, you literally just pull off your smaller jig and replace it with your 2.5. If you're going to use a 3.5, you're going to have to, when you're putting the rig together, use bigger loops so that the jig can actually fit through the gap, because the 3.5 most likely, 3.5 wouldn't fit through that. You just got to make sure that when you're actually making the rig, you're accounting for the size of the squid jig you're going to be using. So for 3.5, you need to make bigger loops. Also, you'll probably have to have your jigs further apart because 3.5s are bigger. So if you had two 3.5s, they may not be far enough apart and might still tangle in the water. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I'll catch you in the next one.